Hi there, I welcome you. It's Effective Pedagogy for Online Learning by Angelo Delasanti. Why did I choose this topic? I wanted a topic that basically I use on a normal basis in my classroom. My classroom is an online environment. So I choose this one because I like to play with the proper pedagogy to make my students learn. So I'm going to go through six articles that I discovered. The first three are academic, where I'm going to define what pedagogy is, effective pedagogy, that is, see if you can actually humanize it, and then look at three principles that an article was talking about. Then number four is a blog, number five is a video, and then number six is going over University of Harvard, actually, article. So the first one, as we realize, we're going to define it. And what we realize is that the definition of effective pedagogy is not really put in stone. And throughout the video, you can pause it and look over the details of what each one is talking about. But what's important is that they talk about best practice in quotes. Keep in mind, best practice is something that is used regularly, but we don't know if it's actually good practice, but we just do it as teachers most of the time. But this is why they have to ask these questions. Another one is maturity. Well, when the student gets older, they are more capable of actually using online learning. That's another thing that what they were mentioning in this article. So usually university students do quite well going online, where it's asynchronous because that's what I teach. And this is one of the things that can a kindergarten be successful in it? It'd be very, very difficult. They need a lot of support compared to a high school student wouldn't need as much. But this is the questions you need to ask still. We also realized this article was talking about social and teaching presence, and those are important because without the teaching of the topic, then there will be no social perspective of things too, because there is no guidance for it. And those are the questions that are related to it. And disciplinary content area is important because each subject area can have more interaction than others compared to math. You would need more interaction to make sure the practice is done properly. And then in a humanities course, you would just need more focus on how to write, and the practice would be a little bit different of how that would be looked at. So, interaction of that would be important. And we realize that there's technology inclusion, and this one deals with the fact of, well, do we really need the technology being put in place? So always ask that question. If I find as a teacher too very difficult to use that technology, then it'd be very difficult probably for that student too. So something to always ponder. Conclusion from the article that e-pedagogy is basically this word that was used as a theory of online pedagogy. So they came up with that. Deeper they look into this theory, what's going to happen is that there's more questions that arise. So best practices, as we said earlier, as the quotation, may not be generalized as they appear. Next article, humanizing, as I was talking about, and let's look at this one, where they were saying humanizing usually occurs when there's very lots of activity that's happening, and dehumanizing does happen when there is too many students in a classroom. Like in some universities, they have like 300 students, and even some of the high school courses that I teach, I could have up to 100 kids. So what happens is that it's basically mostly self-marking questions that are established, and there is penalty due dates if you hand in things late. But to make it more humanizing, what they're suggesting is that if we actually focus more on having a different grading window, as they quoted there, where it actually helped, where students will make a decision when things are due and so forth. Of course, make realistic goals here, and also have a voice of how the questions should be looked at. Like there should be open-ended questions. So basically, in the end, what they're recommitting to make this happen is social transformation. Those three questions that are considered because a lot of student feedback was given, and they are saying that those are the three right there. So do pause the video and look at them. The next one is the three principles of effective online pedagogy. I like this one because it was an actual teacher who's been teaching 30 years, and they were basically saying his view of things of what should be done in an online classroom. And he came up with that the first principle: let the students do the work, most of it, of course. And the quote is right there. As you realize, the more quality time students spend engaged in content, the more of the content they learn. So that's important because if a student's really engaged in the material because of all the different activities that are being done, of course they want to learn more then. So they give you five different ways that how to get these students engaged, especially through discussion. And there's the three ways where discussion can happen through each other from just reading material from a website, and then they discuss that, what they learned. The next one, I like facilitating. So as a facilitator, a student would be assigned to basically make more engagement to occur through the discussion. And then the last one is with detailed instructions, the student would be led through that discussion. So, student research on web resource is another form where they would have to research on material, peer assistance, and peer assessing. So, peer assessing is a typical one where the student hands in the work rather than the teacher marks it, he gives it to another student to mark. And peer assistance, of course, helping another student in class. Case study analysis, where students go in groups and they work together with a case study. So interactivity is important because that's principle number two. And to make that happen, interaction is not just discussion. So collaborative research paper was one of the ideas that they talked about, where they actually start from the beginning of the term and they keep on going throughout the year, the term, I should say, where they work together to come up with a research paper. Compared to number two, research proposal team project, a little bit different, where they actually not don't take so much time to make this happen, but they work as a collaborative team together to research on ideas and so forth. Compared to the first idea, it lasts a very long time because they have to present it and so forth. And the third idea they came up with was strive for presence. So there's three kinds of presence: social, cognitive, and teaching presence, all from the Koi frame model, which is an important one because without all three working together, it'll be very difficult to make it happen. Um, so presence, keep in mind, if without it, we would have difficult a task for it. So social presence effective. To make it effective, of course, you need to have proper organization of your class to make that happen. Interactive, make sure that promoting the actual interaction to occur, and cohesive to always make it related to the content, of course. Collegiality, basically dealing with how others in a group work together to make that happen, whether related in the same subject. So, cognitive presence, keep in mind, is dealing with the topic itself. And teaching presence is when the teacher can be done by facilitating the discussion or direct instruction. So, end of the day, if all three were working together, you will realize that presence actually makes it strive in the class and so forth. Next one for online, this is the blog one where they came up with these ideas. And the first one is the flipped classroom. It has been brought up many times in the discussions already. Flipped classroom, where the student comes already knowing the knowledge from watching something or where they learn something on their own. So that's very important to have a flipped classroom for that reason, because that is a different approach of online learning. Collaborative learning, of course, where people are working together to make sure the learning is occurring. Open source education resources, important because of the fact that some resources have to be usable throughout the world and you have to make it available for everyone. So not all sources are available, and this is what creates that issue of not having open source. And blended learning is many definitions for this, but what's important is that there's many different ways of learning. It doesn't have to be just online. It could be face to face and online. It could be also the fact of online and synchronous, meaning that there's videos and Google Meets and so forth. 10 top principles of online pedagogy. This was from a Vimo video, which was on the website of De Montfort University. And they did have an article with it, but I took the video approach and I liked how they brought up the 10 approaches. basically quickly looking at them, you will realize that there's no such thing as the typical student. So keep in mind, you have to be adaptive to them, making the learning resources accessible. So without the easy access using them with all different kinds of different learning platforms or operating systems, it won't work. Structure the student learning journey. Number three, if you don't have a structure of due dates and so forth, they might be lost. Support each other. So make sure you get students to have open discussions and so forth available for them so they can help each other, like have chats, rooms, and so forth. Number five, engagement. Without the fact of having the proper engagement, they will be lost. Six, structure interaction. So make sure they have that interaction occurring where you have set times and so forth, or it doesn't have to be times, but certain days where they can actually discuss with each other. Consistency is important. So each module should look very similar so they can actually learn from each other on that. Tone and voice. Well, if the students can know right off the back if a teacher is angry by the voice raising and so forth. So make sure if you want to put a concept across, make that tone properly. Maintain a presence, make sure people are communicating with each other, and plan spontaneity. So keep in mind, everything can happen in plans, but sometimes things can happen that go out of whack. Make sure you plan for that. So that was that VMO video. And then the last one was the pedagogical best practices. And for this one from Harvard University, I found this one is a good, interesting one because it focused on the pedagogy, not the medium. Keep in mind, the medium is the actual like learning platform and so forth. It's the actual way you always taught in class. So now you're bringing it to online world. So you should be using the same ways you've done in the past. If the students are engaged with the material, then learning is taking place. Keep in mind that if they are not engaged, you've lost them. So there must be a way to bring them back with the proper pedagogy. And asynchronous pre-recordings, make them short. Sorry, this video might be long. I but I needed to include all six of the things I'm reviewing here. So just letting you know, do break them by putting them in chunks if you need to. Reflecting questions are important, even having polls, somewhere of interaction to occur in the lecture. So even in the pre-recording, there's a lecture going on, so you have to make it interactive for them. Include a personal touch by adding personal stories and humor when possible. Yes, you probably saw all these emojis throughout my presentation to make sure you understand that there is a presence on my part as a personal touch. So thanks, and hopefully you enjoyed yourself in this effective pedagogy for online learning. Any questions, you can reach out to my email at the bottom, my personal email, and Twitter. My only a week I've been using it. It's Angelo Teach, and hopefully you can reach out to me on there too, so we can learn together. If you have any questions, have a great day.